So now what you do is you just take your yarn hook, put it down as if you're going to do a purl, just down into the loop and up. This is a chain cast on that we're using. It's one of the chain cast ons. And then we just go behind this peg. I'll put this down because we're just going to use our fingers now. And you've got the loop here, and you just take the working yarn and pull it through, making a new loop here. Behind, pull the working yarn through and snugging it up as you go, and going behind, pull the working yarn through, snugging it up. Then you're just going to want to check and make sure you're not too tight. You want it snug, but not so tight you can't get it over, that you've gotten too tight. And this all looks good. I could easily pull that over, and yet it's still snug, so that's really good. And then we just keep doing that, snugging it up. You can do it in one motion. I like doing it in kind of 3 motions like this. It just sort of helps me to get my tension right. And so we're just going to do that all the way around the loom. So I'll meet you up when we get close to the end, and I'll show you how to finish off the cast on. Okay, so here I am coming to the end, and I just do the last one, and then I take the loop, put it over peg 1, and just pull it. And then what we do is we just take the bottom loop here and knit it over, and now it's all secured. Now this cast on is kind of a few row process to get that nice little chain. So what we're going to do next is do a row of purl, then a row of owl eye wrap, and then another row of purl, and that will be our cast on. So to purl, peg down into the yarn, just like that, top of the peg down, pull the yarn, then you just pull the yarn through, you got a loop, and then you hold on to this and pull it off and just place it on and snug it up a little bit. And that's all. Go back down, scoop up the working yarn, up and over. There's your purl. Let's do it really, really slow. There you go. You scoop up the yarn. Then this loop is going to have to go on the peg, so you just go up and snug it up a little bit. Okay, so we're just going to purl all the way around to this peg, and then I'll meet you back there. Okay, so I've purled all the way around, and now we're going to do the Ewrap. I mean the owl eye. So we're going to do the owl eye for 1 row, and then it'll be a row of purl after that. So for the owl eye, you're going to wrap over peg 1 and just knit it over. Now you're going to go back over peg 1 by going behind peg 1, in front of it, and over peg 2, and then just knitting them off. And you're going to do this nice and loose. Okay, so these are nice and loose. And then behind peg 1, over peg 2. And as you see, this is nice and loose. And then just knit them off. And you're at peg 1 again. You're always at peg 1. Wherever the working yarn is your peg 1. You'll always know what direction you're going with owl eye 2, because it's going to be pointing towards the direction you're going to be going. You're always going to just wrap behind it, over peg 1 and 2, knit them off. Very easy to do. Behind peg 1, over peg 2, knit them off. So we're just going to go all the way around the hat till we hit here, and I'll meet you when I get close to the end here and show you how to finish off the row. Okay, so here we are near the end of the row, and I'm just doing owl eye over these 2 pegs. Okay, so this one, all the rest stitches have got 2 pegs on them. Once we knit this one over, it has 1 stitch on it, so we're going to want to make sure we wrap it again, just like that. We're not going to wrap that peg because we're doing a different stitch, and wrap it over, and that way we'll never get holes, because all the pegs that should have 2 stitches have 2 stitches. And then we're going to do our last row of purl, and we're here to start at peg 1. We scoop under, do the purl, and this is the last bit of purl in the whole hat. That's it. There's just the 2 rows of purl, and that's to give us that really nice cast on edge. And it's owl eye with purl is a kind of a curly stitch. It looks like waves. So when you have them together, it leaves you with this nice looking chain look. And it's going to look really good on the outside of the hat. So we'll finish the row of purl, and I'll meet you up here and we'll start on the brim. Okay, and that's it. And that's all our part of our cast on. And that's what it's going to look like. So you see it has this real chain kind of a look in here. And it's going to be, we'll see it more as it gets looser, but we now do the brim. And that's the Ewrap in 2. And the reason I named it Ewrap in 2 is it's made out of a certain way of doing Ewraps over 2 pegs, and I figured someone else might come up with that independently, because after all, that's just Ewrapping 2 pegs. So I thought a name like Ewrap in 2 pretty much tells you what it is. So what you're doing is you're going to be Ewrapping 2 pegs together like that, and you're going to alternate it the next row. So you'll be wrapping different 2 pegs together. And so that's how we do the Ewrap in 2 stitch. So the name really works for it. So the first thing we're going to do is wrap 1 and 2 together. So we come behind peg 1 and 2, and then we go in front of peg 1 and 2 and come behind them, back over to behind peg 4, and then wrap 4 and 3 together. So we're just going to be wrapping like that, behind, over. So we have every 2 pegs. I'll come up closer so you can see it. So 1 and 2 are wrapped together, 3 and 4 are wrapped together, 5 and 6 are wrapped together. And so these 2 aren't wrapped together, but they have the yarn behind that's connecting the piece. And so we're going to go all the way around, and we'll be ending with the 2 pegs that are right here, because we have an even loom. This has an even amount of pegs. If you're working on, for example, the 41 peg loom, you're going to have an extra peg here that you can't wrap. So you don't wrap it this time around. The next time around, you will be wrapping it, and you'll be wrapping it with this peg. So you'll be wrapping those 2 together. Well, let's see, no, it's the last one. Well, when we come up, you'll have that 1 peg left, and you'll have to wrap it, and the last 2 we wrap will be these 2. So yeah, then you'll just wrap that one with this one. Sorry about that. You'll be wrapping that one with this one, because your yarn have wrapped here, and then you'll want to wrap that around and this one. But that'll be for the next row, because this one already has the stitches on. So if you're on an uneven loom, it's kind of a bit easier to do this stitch, but you can do it on either. It works on either. Okay, so we're just going to keep going now. The other thing to really remember about this is you want to keep it really, really loose, because as you go around and alternate them, it does start to tighten up, because you'll be tightening over these loose wraps with the under wraps, and it can start to get really tight on you. So you want to keep it loose. So once you've gone about this far, it's good to go back and check and make sure you're really loose. So loose that it could almost fall off. That's how loose we want it. And if you find it's not loose enough, you can just pull this, and you can keep loosening all the way back. Get it really, really loose. So just make sure you're loose, and go back and check and make sure before you knit it off that it's all really loose. So you just keep wrapping. All the way around. And checking, and I'm nice and loose. I've done this a lot, so I know I'm loose. We come up, and there we go. And because we're even, we've got every 2 peg pairs matched up. If we were odd, we'd have the 1 peg pair there. Then we're going to knit them all off, and then when we start, we're going to want to knit these 2 pegs together for our odd rows. I call it the even row, because we got 1 and 2. And the odd row, because we're working with the last peg and the first peg. So if you've got the extra peg there, you're gonna, for your odd row, always be wrapping that last peg with this peg. Okay, so we're just going to knit it all off. And if I knit this, this is going to hold my peg in place. And I can see that my yarn, I might as well knit this one off too to really hold it in place. I'm going to see that my yarn is going over these pegs when I start again. So that's going to help me to know that I did an even row. If I had to put my work down after I'd knitted off everything, I could see that it was coming from this peg, and so that I had wrapped these two pegs together. Then we're just going to knit it off. Well, I'll just pause while I knit it off because that's going to be boring to watch me knit off the whole. Okay, they're all knitted off. So now I'm going to wrap these two pegs together, and if you've got the odd peg loom, you're going to be wrapping the odd peg with peg 1. And we just go over very loose, and now we'll be wrapping these together. Nice and loose, going back and checking and making sure you're loose and loosening it if you need to. This is really going to help you learn to knit loose if you're a tight knitter, because you can go back and fix it, and it helps you to practice so you get really good at loose knitting. It's really easier on your hand and arm and everything to knit loose. It also helps to have a nice big hook like this. Okay, so now when we knit them off, we're going to be down here, and we're going to want to come up and wrap these two pegs again. So we always want to go odd, then even, then odd, then even. So I'm just going to do this. There, and then just knit them off. And again, we're just going to knit off, and I'll meet you back up. Okay, so now I've wrapped all the way around, and I want to wrap those two pegs together again. And as you see, I'm going to have to come down pretty far, and that starts to happen on every one of your second rows. So what I like to do, I'd rather be coming from here to have about the same width, so this string won't be so long here when it comes over. So you can just lift this up and put the working yarn behind. That's one method of doing this. And then as we come back over here to wrap these two, then this yarn isn't so long. So there's other methods to do it, but we only have to do one every 2 rows. So I think it's just as easy to just do that one as teach you the other method. So we come back, and we're going to be even again. So we're wrapping peg 1 and 2. 3 and 4, and basically that's all it is. So I'm going to do a few rows and get back to you. So you're just going to be alternating, and always start with peg 1 and 2, and start with the last peg that you did. Even if you're on an uneven one, it'll be 1 here. It won't have been wrapped, but always start out on even, then odd, then even, then odd. And if your string looks like it's too long, just put it behind the next peg over, and then the string won't be too long, and it will blend in and you won't even see it. So yeah, I'm going to do a brim. I'm going to go about 1.5 inches. That's where I like my brims. You can go less or more. You can actually have a brimless style out of this, or what looks brimless, just by doing just these rows or a couple more.